Okay, so now getting on back onto the 5MR1, what we got here is the actual main shaft, okay? What I'm going to do before I get started, I want you guys to see here that this thing is all rusted and nasty. When you're running the wrong type of fluid, especially gear oil, it can be displaced by water and then the water gets trapped there and starts eating everything. So we're going to pull that guy aside and use a rag to actually wipe any residual rust on there, trying to make sure that I don't make the problem worse. And before I tear it all apart, another thing I'm going to do, you have a couple choices here. First things first, I'm going to put a little dot here, maybe down in here, and I'm going to make a note. The ridge, once again, is facing the front of the transmission. Down here, there is no ridge, but the tapered side is facing the front. You'll see that. Right here, if you get a side view, you'll see that it's tapered on one edge, sharp 90 degree on the bottom. Okay? What you're looking at there is the orientation. Keep that in mind for reassembly purposes. Make a note of it as you need to. Now we're going to come in with expanding ring pliers. I'm going to put my finger over the top here so that if the snap ring starts to get away from us, it won't fly far. See that? That is how you prevent damage to anybody else and also yourself. I'm going to put that snap ring right down here, just past that bearing. And then before we go much further, I'm actually going to take and I'm going to remove the outer sleeve. The reason I want to do that is so that as these little dogs start to fall out, I don't have to worry about them going anywhere. Now I heard one fall. There it is. There's 3 dogs. And now this needs to be pressed off. You have 2 ways to go about this. This is not a very high pressure interference fit, so you can use the press, or you can do another age-old method, see if it'll actually work. This only works on shafts that have a small taper, so you don't make any damage right there on the tip. I'm going to do something that guys use in the real world. Keep this nice and vertical. And I'm going to go ahead and drop it a couple times. Now you'll notice that we had one snap ring and also a spacer come off. That spacer was just there, and that spacer is actually what IDs this bearing. See how that fits in there nicely with that flat spot? So once again, we're going to put the bearing back in there, the spacer, and then we're going to look at this guy here. This is our center or inner hub for that synchronizer sleeve. This is for 3rd and 4th gear. I'm going to put that guy back in there. This would be 3rd gear. You'll notice all this rust and delamination of the lining for the synchronizer. We're going to put that guy aside there. We're going to inspect the bearing surface here. You're going to have to tell me whether it's scored. You're going to have to tell me if these splines are damaged. And then this guy on the back side, this output bearing, will actually have to be pressed off. Okay guys, so what we have here is a main shaft now flipped upside down with the nut or a bearing splitter mounted to it. Okay, you have to make sure when you put the gear inside a bearing splitter that you don't use the tapered side. You're going to be tempted to because it looks like it would fit more. The problem is these are super hardened pieces, and so is the gear. And when you start putting them in at a taper, you're actually going to start chipping all these teeth as soon as you start putting any pressure on it. So you got to make sure that it's flat side against flat side so that all the teeth share that force equally and you have less chance of actual splintering. Once it's there, you also want to make sure that you are not on any of the synchronizer dogs, that you're just on the actual gear tooth. Once you put this in, you're going to center this up. And if you'll notice, I have reinforcement right here on these bolts. These are designed, because of their structure, to take pressure. The bolts themselves are not. If you mount it the other way, that will actually start to bend. These need to be supported evenly. So you're going to go over to the press, and then we're going to pump it, and keep in mind, you do not let go of the shaft. Once it starts to make contact, hold on to it. You'll see that it'll start to move down. Once that starts to happen, you'll see that it'll come loose right through there. And your shaft is quite a ways, almost completely and totally apart. We're going to take the synchronizer off, or the synchronizer blocker ring, however you want to call it. You're going to set this guy aside so it doesn't fall. And when we take this over to the bench, you'll see, we bring it over here. I did not use an impact or a big wrench or anything to tighten this down. Remember, you're not trying to bite into the side of these synchronizers. All you're trying to do is give a controlled support for this gear. So you don't want it on the dogs, you want it on the actual tooth face. We're going to take this bearing, flip it upside down, put that bearing there. And we're going to put the synchro on it. Now we're going to figure out how this guy comes apart. Once again, we're looking at a synchro hub assembly. And you'll notice that as soon as I tilted it up, what happened? I all of a sudden had a synchronizer that just fell off the shaft. The only pressing that you should be doing on this main shaft is for that one. Now, if someone can name what type of synchronizer assembly this is, I just might have to buy them a soda. So just be aware, this is what you're going to have to show me in order to reassemble. Not only that, but you're going to have to show me a nice clean case. You're going to have to put in the effort to have a nice clean case. That means as we start to use a parts washer, solvent tank and everything, you're responsible for PPE. You need to bring in gloves, make sure your safety glasses are on at all times so that any of that solvent or anything gets in your eyes or anything, it's on you. Ooh, bad. Yeah, you're going to have to grow up a little bit. I love you guys. Let me know if you have any questions. Throw it in the discussions on the video and we'll go from there.